Alright, hi everybody. Welcome back to another episode in procedural IFR flying, and today we're going to be looking at a procedural VOR approach. So at the minute we are in Gander in Newfoundland, and we're going to have a look at this procedural VOR approach for a landing onto runway 21 VOR DME approach into Gander. So at the minute we're just in the cruise. We're kind of to the northwest of the airfield. So what I'll do now is I'll swing kind of back around a little bit and get us reasonably set up for our arrival into Gander. So I will imagine that we're coming in from the west, and I'll have a chat about what we're going to do then as we get turned around. So first things first, let's make the weather completely IMC. We're in IMC, and we're coming in from the west. So what we've done so far is we have just set up the VOR frequency. So if we go to navs here and radios, you can see we've got 112.7 set, which is our Gander VOR, and you can see it's here Yankee Quebec X-ray, which is the Yankee Quebec X-ray, and so we've got that idented. We're happy we can use that. It's given us what we assume to be a correct guidance, and so what we're going to do now is just set up for the rest of the approach and have a quick talk about that. So we are going to set our compass so that we have our bar for the deviation for the VOR. So let's do that first of all. So if I can remember how to do that. So GPS ADF off, VOR nav 1, okay, and that's it. So it's set active nav to VOR 1, and you can see now that's brought up our VOR needle. So first things first, we have to think about is the how we're going to fly this. So we'll be coming from the west, so we'll be flying east towards it. So if you imagine that we're going to be coming in from this direction here, we're going to be going towards the VOR itself. So we're going to be coming in straight over the top of the VOR, and then what we need to do is we need to track outbound on 185. So on this radial, which actually it says is radial 185, but I would have thought it would have been 005 away from the VOR. So I'm going to set up 005. So that looks like it's about 005 to me. So what we're going to do is we're going to fly overhead. Yeah, it is radial 005. Sorry, I'm just seeing it now. So the 185 is the inbound course. I don't know what that R is there for, but anyway. So we're going to come in from the west. We're going to go overhead the VOR. We're going to track this 005 radial outbound, and then we're going to get to this point here, and we're going to make a right turn. We're going to head 050, and then we're going to make a left turn after we probably time for about a minute and a half. This is based on timing. So normally I think in a jet it would be a minute and a half. In light aircraft it would be a minute this leg, but we'll do a minute and a half just to give us more time. We have to not go outside 10 nautical miles from Oddboss. So we know that Oddboss is based on the Yankee Quebec X-ray VOR, and we know that Oddboss is 8.5 miles. So we can't go outside 10 miles of Outbound, so we know that's going to be 18.5D. So we can't go outside 18.5D. and that could be for a few reasons. It could be because of terrain, it could be because of air traffic control restrictions from other airports. So yeah, we just gotta stay within that, so that's fine. So now that we've looked at how we're going to track it, we know as well that we're currently at 3,000 feet, which you can see here, and we're going to, once we go overhead, then this outbound leg, we can be at 1,800 feet. So that's the platform altitude for the whole procedure. So once we cross overhead the VOR, and we're tracking the VOR outbound on this leg, we know that we can descend down to 1,800 feet for the platform altitude. So we've got lots and lots of time to do that. So this is quite a long leg. So what else can we look at? We can look at the profile. We can see our final approach fixed by this F is an UDBOS. So that would have a number of restrictions attached to it if the weather was bad and stuff like that. But today we're not going to worry about any of those restrictions. We're just going to continue on. But the FAF is something to be aware about, and what it looks like on the chart. So it's shown by that little F. So that's our FAF. This is our descent point. And so we're going to track along 1,800 feet until we get to 4.1 miles from the runway. And how do we tell it's 4.1 miles from the runway? Well, it's 7.1 D from the VOR. So that's going to be our descent point. So we'll start descending there from 1,800 feet. And how quickly do we descend? Well, we are going to look at our guidance, if we can find any. There should be descent profile guidance. Well, there isn't any actually. So we're just going to keep an eye on these. So we'll probably do something around 700 feet per minute initially and see how that works out. So now we're 7.9 miles from the VOR, 7.8 now, I just clicked to. So we're getting quite close. And so I'm going to push the head of this VOR. We're going to just go a little bit to the south of it, just so that we have a little bit of a cleaner intercept onto this outbound course. What else would we look at? We know our landing distance. We'd have calculated our landing distance performance and what flap setting we would need to use, all that sort of good stuff. But we know that. I've also already put in our minimums, so it's 880 feet, and you can see that here. Our bar minimums 880 feet. So if we haven't seen anything by 880 feet, we're going to go around, and the go around is 185 at a minimum of 2,600 feet, left turn direct to CYQX X-ray, maintain 2,600, and you can see that. So basically straight ahead, heading 185, then at 2,600 feet we can turn back to the VOR, and then we could decide what we were going to do, if we were going to have another approach, or we could go, so we could go straight ahead outbound again for the arrival, or we could take up a holding pattern there and divert probably somewhere else if we didn't think we were going to get in. Right, so that's basically the overview quickly of what we're going to do. We're now 3.6 miles away from the VOR, so we're going to think about what we're going to do next. So we can see already that the VOR is getting a bit more sensitive, so we're going to start turning straight towards it now. And now we're coming in from the southwest here a little bit. I'm going to keep the chart up the whole time. It's not showing anything. You can see here I'm not using the this screen at all. This screen, so I'm not really using this at all. So it's you're not missing out on anything there. So I'll just put it up here a little bit more so you can actually see better. Okay, so I need to pay attention to what we're doing. We're only 0.5 miles away now, so I need to start swinging. And we've already passed it, have we? Sorry. Yeah, we've already passed it. So this is going to be a bad intercept, but that's okay. It's fine. We can get back onto it. So we're going to track that outbound. If I had been paying attention to where I was, I would have turned probably about half a mile before the VOR, and that would have helped us intercept onto it quite nicely. But we can get back onto this fairly easy. It's good to see as well, how you manage overshooting things and stuff, I guess. So not that I meant to do that, but I guess it's good to see. I do have a timer somewhere. Timer. Okay, so we'll need that for the next section. Okay, so you can see the needle starting to come in now. So I'm going to turn right and intercept that. If I can get the mice in the right place. Okay, so not a million miles away. So we're on it. We're at 3.5 miles, and we know we've got to go to Udboss plus 7 miles. So 8 plus 7 is 15 plus the half, so that's 15.5 D, and we know we can't go outside of 18 D, so it's going to be quite tight actually, that whole thing. So we might need to slow down a little bit for that leg. So we're just going to put a little bit of course correction in, track that VOR perfectly out. And we also know now that we can start our descent, so let's start our descent down to 1,800 feet. And I'm going to do that in vertical speed. So I'm going to click this, and I'm going to tell it to go down very gently. And because I've used vertical speed, it doesn't have any attachment to an auto throttle or anything like that on this plane, so I'll pull the power back a little bit as well to take account for the extra energy that we're going to gain from descending. So now we're going out, we're at 6 miles. Once we get to 8.5 miles, we know that we're positioned Udboss, and then we're going to go for another 7 miles from there. So we're going to 15.5 D. So we're just coming into the top of the white arc now, so we can actually start setting flaps then if we wanted to. So we'll probably hold about 120 knots. I think that's probably a good speed. So we'll increase our power until this little pink line goes away, and then that should hold roughly around there. Just drifting slightly to the right, so we know that we need to come left a little bit by looking at this. And we're thinking ahead now, so we know we've got to go to 15.5 miles, and we're thinking about then what we're going to do whenever we get to that point. So we're going to swing the heading bug ground to 050, and then once the heading bug swung around to 050, we are going to start our timer once we're wings level. Once we're wings level, then we'll start our timer on 050. We're not tracking anything, we're kind of using dead reckoning at that point, and it's only for 60 seconds. And then whenever we are after 60 seconds, we'll do a left turn and we'll reselect our course to 185 inbound. So for our inbound course, we're going to reselect it to 185, and then we're going to intercept that. And then once we're stabilized and on that, then we're going to track that the whole way until our descent point. Okay, so we're getting close to our platform altitude. So our platform altitude we know is 1,800 feet. So that's our only descent for this procedure. Sometimes you'll have stepped descents, so you'll maybe be able to go down to 3,000 feet on the outbound leg, and then you can go down more whenever you get turned inbound or something like that. But for this procedure, it's quite simple. So this is what you call beacon outbound. So we've passed overhead the VOR and we're heading outbound now. So if you were talking to air traffic control, which we're not going to worry too much about, in this clip you would tell air traffic control your call sign, and then you would say 3,000 feet beacon outbound. So we're just leveling at 1,800 feet, so once we level out we might need to add just a tiny bit of power just to keep that airspeed, but actually I just added some and it's looking pretty good. Keep an eye on the mileage, so we've got about 3.5 miles to go, and we're all the time we're just tweaking this heading bug. If you have wind on, you'll need to put in a course correction for the drift of the wind. And sometimes you can get that on the G1000. I know how to get it. I haven't quite worked out how to get it on this. Don't know. Angle of attack, wind, there you go. So we do have a little bit of wind on. So it's 8 knots across. There we go. So that probably, we need to put a little bit of an offset in for that then. So that's probably why we've been drifting off, because we've had a few knots of wind. So we're gonna just increase the power a smidge to keep around 120 knots. You can see there's some grind there, but okay, so we're getting ready now. We know we're gonna come up to this 15.5 mile point very quickly now. So I'm getting ready on the heading bug, and I'm just waiting to select this 050. Oops, too early. Right, 15.3 miles, that's pretty good. By the time we actually turn, we'll be pretty close. So 15.4, so we've preempted that there. We're 15.5 miles and now we're turning off, so that's perfect. We're going to set heading 050. Our wind is going to be pretty much straight behind us, so that's going to push us away from the VOR as well. And so we're setting heading 050, and whenever we're wings level, we're going to start the stopwatch. So that's right now. There's the stopwatch. We're going to time for 60 seconds. We just have a think about what it's doing. So it is pushing us off to the right. So whenever we're re-intercepting the course, we might need to just go a little bit deeper into the turn. So we're not using the course anymore. So we're going to reset to our inbound. So we're going to put that to 185. And we're at 50 seconds. It's so slow to wind around. So we're really getting close to that 18.5 miles too. So 185, that's roughly about right. And we're at 60 seconds, we're past 60 seconds, so we're going to swing around. And now what we're doing is we're just looking at where the course bar is, and we're having to think about what we need to do to intercept that. So I'm going to leave it somewhere around there for now. And you can see it's already coming in actually. So we've got a bit of an 8 knot headwind from the right hand side. So I never checked, but we might have gone over just over the 18.5 miles. But in the real world, it would have been much quicker putting in heading selections and course. Well, you know, the course you would have put in a couple of seconds instead of having to wait for that little ticking noise while it went the whole way around. So it's much quicker in real life. Right, so now we're getting established inbound. We've got this set to 185, and we're going to get set up on the inbound course. So it's just coming in, so I'm just tweaking the heading bug just to get us set up nicely on that inbound course. So we're on heading 207. The course is actually set to 184, so I'll set it to 185 just to be anal. 185. I never actually saw this before, but that tells you what the course is aligned with. I was just eyeballing it off this, but that's good. Right, so we can see that's almost holding it actually. So we're nearly on the radial. We're definitely within a dot. So if we had to descend further, we could descend now, but we don't need to. So. But you can see that this heading is pretty much holding this line, so it's not moving anymore. So I'm going to increase it a little bit, but I'm going to take note of what that heading is for later, because it seems to be a good course correction. So we've got heading 200 in, so 15 degrees of drift on. So I'm just going to tweak it ever so slightly. It is coming in really slowly now, so maybe just slightly less than that 200 would have been perfect. And the next point we're waiting for now, so we're tracking this VOR inbound, we're already at our altitude. We need to consider whenever we're going to start reducing our speed and putting our landing gear down, stuff like that, whenever we're going to start configuring the aircraft, because that's going to make things a little bit harder to manage too. So it's a good idea to maybe do that a little bit earlier than you normally would on an ILS approach, because you've got a few more things to think about in this as you tweak your altitude on the way down. So we are pretty much established inbound, and it's looking pretty good at the moment actually. Now we're 13 miles away from the VOR, and what we're waiting for is the first point, which is 8.5 miles away, which is Outbound. And we can also stop that timer. Right, I'm going to start reducing the speed. I'm going to put the first stage flapping, and we're going to do about 100 knots. We're not going to worry too much about what speed we should be flying, because I'm not really familiar with the speeds for this aircraft, but we'll do around about 100 knots to start off with. Not even sure if there's an auto throttle on this. I haven't played around with the throttle very much. So yeah, we're tracking that quite nicely now. So you can see that little bit of wind, this wind hour really helps. You know, you can see where it is. Whenever you're learning to fly, you don't have anything quite as nifty as that, so yeah, that's definitely helpful. And you can see our radio altitude is at 6,100 feet, so the ground level is obviously a little bit higher than what than sea level. And you can see the aerodrome elevation is 496 feet, so it's actually quite high considering it's very close to the sea. Right, so we're just tweaking a tiny bit, so that course is just a little bit too much, so I'm going to bring it back a little bit more. And that's probably as a result of slowing down. Actually, it wouldn't have been, probably just too much. Right, so we're thinking about now, 8.5 miles is positioned at boss, so nothing actually happens there, but we're passing the FAF, so the final approach fix. So now we're beacon inbound and we're passing the FAF. So air traffic control might ask you to report the FAF sometimes, so that's where we're passing. So the next thing is 7.1 miles, and we need to descend down to our MDA from there. So I'm going to set 800 feet in altitude window. Hopefully it doesn't start going down yet. 800 feet. I'm going to speed up a little bit and let that go a little bit. So 7.7, we're looking for 7.1. And the wind is changing all the time as well, actually. So whenever I hit 7.1, I'm going to hit vertical speed, and I'm going to start winding down at 7.1. Right, so then we know our first, and we're going to reduce the power as well. And I'm going to go gear down, full flap, and I'm going to go to 80 knots. So you can see our first check altitude is at 6 miles, it's 1,450 feet that we're looking. So there's 6.1, so we're descending a little bit too quick, so I'm going to trim that up a little bit. about right. We're just letting the wind blow us back onto this course a little bit, and so our next check altitude's at 5 miles, it's 11:30. So there's 5.7, and we're at 12:50, so we can kind of gauge if we're going to be in or not. Looks like we might be kind of just about in. So we're only doing 400 feet per minute a minute. So 11:30, we're at 5.3, so we're still a little bit low. So tweak that up a little bit more. But now we are getting close to the runway, and hopefully we can see the VOR, and it's quite offset actually. So what we're going to do now, but you can see we're tracking towards it, and if I had looked at the chart properly, I would have seen that it's really, really offset. And doesn't actually tie up with the final approach course of the runway. So that's exactly where we'd expect to be if we had briefed it properly, and we'll disconnect the autopilot, and because we've disconnected that, we'll take off the flight directors. But you can see we're very, very close to the profile. We're just gone 2 reds, 2 whites, so that's looking pretty good. And we're just going to keep looking at the runway, and we're going to fly onto it. So we know we've got a bit of a crosswind from the right hand side. So we're not going to let the wind blow us through the runway center line. Instead, we're going to turn a little bit early and just let it push us on. And we're a little bit high now. Those 2 white blocks are our aiming points. That's where we want to touch down our main wheels. So we're going to put those, once we get onto the glide slope, we're going to put those at a point in the window, and we're going to try and keep them there the whole way down. We're a little bit low now. It's a little bit bumpy. And we're very close to being right on it there. Got blown off again. We're going to flare, close the thrust levers, click the rudder straight, and put our aileron into wind. And we have a nice long runway, so we don't need to worry too much about the brakes, but because it's only training, we'll bring it to a halt, and we'll set the brake. Parking brake set, check. I love that. Oral warning, okay. So that was a VOR approach. If I had have briefed it properly, I would have seen that it was offset from the runway. Normally there is a note somewhere, it probably is. It's been a while since I've done any VOR approaches, but yeah, you can see quite clearly here that the final approach track is 185, and the runway we're landing on is runway 21. So you would have known if you had have briefed this properly that we would have been expecting to see that whenever we broke through the cloud. So it did work out exactly as what it should have, but yeah, definitely something to be aware of whenever you're doing these things, especially VOR approaches. Some RNAV approaches and some NDB approaches would all be offset, so worth a check for that in future, and something I should check before I did this video. But I hope that's of some help, and any questions as always, put them in the comments section. I'll try and answer them as quickly as I can, and if I don't know the answers, I'll go away and find them out. And hit that subscribe button, and we'll get more videos and tutorials up in the future.